Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is Sheldon Chambers and I will be your host today. We're going to start with Ukraine update. General Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's military commander-in-chief, has said Ukraine has shot down a Russian A-50 spy plane and a LL-22 command aircraft in the area of the Sea of Azov. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Switzerland to participate in a World Economic Forum in Davos and met Swiss officials. China must be involved in efforts to end the war between Ukraine and Russia, Switzerland co-chair of the Davos meeting, Ignacio Cassis, said. Russia in mobilizing about 1,000 to 1,100 recruits. It is armed forces every day. Vladimir Zabitsky, deputy head of Ukraine's military intelligence agency, HUR, said in an interview with RBC Ukraine. The UK's Ministry of Defence said that Russia had substantially inflated the numbers of people whom it says have joined the country's armed forces, and with new recruits being disproportionately drawn from impoverished and rural communities. Russia said it has given more than 200 Ukrainian prisoners of war lengthy prison sentences from getting a life sentence, AFP reported. The Kremlin has said Russia was developing relations with our partners, North Korea, in all areas and would build on the agreements reached between the country's leaders when they met at Russia's Space Launch Center in 2023. The UN and its partners appealed for 4.2 billion from donors to support communities in Ukraine devastated by war, as well as Ukrainian refugees in 2024. The UN aid chief, Martin Griffiths, suggested diplomats in Geneva, please don't forget Ukraine, while there are many other places in the world that grab our attention. The UK has announced that it would send 20,000 service personnel to one of NATO's largest military exercises since the Cold War. Turning to Israel, at least 24,285 Palestinians have been killed and 61,154 have been wounded in Israel's strike on Gaza since the 7th of October, the health ministry in the territory said today. In the past 24 hours, 158 Palestinians were killed and 320 wounded, the ministry added. The Israeli military said its troops killed dozens of Palestinian militants around the town of Beit Lahia in northern Gaza and also uncovered about 100 rocket launchers. The Iraqi Kurdish Prime Minister Mansour Barzani has accused Iran of killing innocent civilians in its strike on the capital of the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region. Iraq has condemned Iran's aggression on Erbil that led to the civilian casualties in residential areas, according to a statement by the country's foreign minister, after Iran's Revolutionary Guard said they attacked Israel's spy headquarters in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Iraq has recalled its ambassador from Tehran to discuss the attack on Erbil. France accused Iran of violating Iraq's sovereignty over the attack. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have also claimed an attack in Syria. The group said it has fired ballistic missiles at the terrorist operation in the country, including Islamic State targets, and destroyed them. A U.S. defense official who spoke on conditions of anonymity said the U.S. tracked the missiles which landed in northern Iraq and northern Syria. The initial indications were that the strikes were reckless and imprecise. Jordan's foreign minister, Ayman Safadi, said today that Israel was placing many obstacles to the entry of aid into Gaza that was worsening the plight of the Palestinians. Sadafi said that these hurdles meant only 10% of the total needs of more than 200 million people in Gaza under the siege were being covered. Turkey said it had destroyed 23 targets in overnight airstrikes on Kurdish militants in northern Iraq and Syria, a further escalation of conflicts south of its borders. US Central Command said in a statement today that it had seized Iranian advanced conventional weapons bound for Yemen Houthis on the 11th of January. It was the first seizure of lethal Iranian-supplied advanced conventional weapons to the Houthis since the Houthis' attack against the merchant ships began in November, the statement added. The Israeli military said on Yodeh that its special forces had carried out strikes in the area of Yataya Ash-Shab in Lebanon, requiring Israel to agree to a time-bound mandatory path to a two-state solution was key to future stability in Israel and the Palestinian territories, Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said during the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos today. Aid officials in Gaza believe that pockets of famine already exist in the territory, with parents sacrificing remaining foods for their children. An apple costing $18 and fuel for cooking almost impossible to find, UN agencies have said that Gaza urgently needs more humanitarian assistance as the death toll in the territory during the Israeli offensive there has been risen to more than 24,000. The World Food Programme, UNICEF, and the World Health Organization said in a joint statement that new entry routes needed to be opened to Gaza, more trucks needed to be allowed in each day, and aid workers and those seeking aid needed to be allowed to move around safely. Now, going to the post office scandal in the UK. There have been calls for the UK government to act quickly to ensure victims in the Horizon post office scandal receive the full financial redress they are due before it's too late, after the solicitor for many of the affected sub-postmasters, Neil Hudgell, revealed at today's Business Committee hearing into the scandal that only 3 people had been fully compensated so far. A number of suicides have been linked to the scandal, and a further 33 victims are known to have passed away before being able to see justice. Mr. Hudgell was joined at the committee by leading campaigner Alan Bates, who repeated his frustrations that full redress has still not been made to all the victims by now. The Post Office Minister admitted in the committee today that the UK government ministers didn't sufficiently challenge the Post Office over the scandal. The SNP has been pushing for justice for sub-postmasters for over a decade and has led to the campaign in the UK to condemn the actions of the Post Office. At the 2019 party conference, the SNP passed a motion condemning the actions of Post Office Limited, including Horizon, calling for the UK government to review a legal strategy which wasted millions just months before they first concealed faults and gave up legal defence against these postmasters. Also appearing at the Business Committee hearing today, Fujitsu's European boss, Paul Patterson, apologised to the victims for his company's part in the scandal and agreed to Fujitsu should contribute to financial redress for victims. Commenting, Marion Fellows, MP, said the UK government needs to pick up pace to deliver full financial redress and exoneration to everyone affected before it's too late. Far too many people have died already without ever getting to see the justice they deserved, or even this UK government acknowledge the harm that has been done. The government must do all it can to minimise how many will die without having this injustice addressed. Thousands of people across the country were affected by this, with many still picking up the pieces of their lives and livelihoods that were ruined through no faults of their own. It's a scandal of itself that only 3 victims have received full financial redress, leaving so many still fighting for the money and the exoneration they're due. This is a debacle that was only allowed to unfold after decades of cover-up by successive Labour, Liberal and Tory governments and ministers. It's incumbent on them now to do the right thing, ensure no more delays and deliver justice for the victims who are left alive to see it. The SNP say in Scotland's name, not in Scotland's name, as Sunak faces Tory revolt over the Rwanda bill. Boris Johnson has backed calls by the Conservative rebels to harden the Rwanda deportation bill in a direct intervention on the side of those defying his successor, Rishi Sunak. The former Prime Minister used the social media platform X to retweet an article by the right-wing Tory rebel Simon Clarke, who was describing the bill as a flawed measure and warning he would not support it if it was amended. This bill must be as legally robust as possible, and the right course is to adopt the amendments, Johnson commented. The intervention comes amid a mounting revolt by Conservative MPs threatening to revolt against the bill. They drew on a poll believed to be funded by right-wing opponents of Sunak's leadership. It found his constituency was one of 111 where voters wanted asylum seekers removed without right of appeal. The Prime Minister faces a Conservative meltdown over the Rwanda deportation bill, after two deputy chairs said on Monday night they would support rebel amendments aimed at blocking international human rights laws. Lee Anderson and Brandon Clark-Smith have defied Sunak by backing the right-wing challenges to the bill, which is being debated in Westminster today. The SNP has called the Rwanda bill callous and abhorrent and said it would not be passed in Scotland's name, as it urged the UK government to... I just need to update you there. Lee Anderson has resigned as he is backing the amendments tonight. Anyway, going back to Scotland, commenting, the SNP Home Affairs spokesman Alison Fewlis MP said the UK government's Rwanda bill is deeply callous and immoral and will not be passed in Scotland's name. The Home Secretary's own briefing note states that Rwanda has issues with its human rights records, and it has recently granted asylum to Rwandan refugees. They know this bill will not work and therefore must be scrapped without delay. The SNP will continue to call out the UK government's inhumane and morally bankrupt immigration policies at every possible opportunity. It does not reflect our values and will not be passed in Scotland's name. Turning to Wales, striking doctors accuse Labour of driving medics out of the NHS. Hundreds of striking junior doctors have protested on the steps of the Welsh Parliament in Cardiff and accused Labour of driving medics out of the NHS in Wales by not paying them properly and undermining the beloved institution that is arguably the party's greatest achievement. An estimated 600 doctors who are taking part in the three-day strike expressed anger at the Labour-led Welsh Government's refusal to increase its pay offer, with many threatening to leave the country if their demands are not met. The Welsh Government said the strike, the first full stoppage ever by junior doctors in Wales, had so far led to 30% of planned procedures or operations being postponed, and almost half of the outpatient appointments rescheduled. 13 out of the 19 Welsh hospitals were at the level red, the busiest level. Welsh ministers have said the 5% pay rise they have offered is in line with other workers in the Welsh NHS and has already at its limits of what it could afford. They blame the UK government for not providing enough funding for the public services. But Doctors' Trade Union BMA Cymru Wales argues that pay has been eroded by almost a third since 2008 to 2009, and is even worse than in England. On the steps of the Senate, junior doctors described their anguish at the having to strike, but said they were determined to get fair pay rises. Some held up placards pointing out that doctors starting their career in Wales will earn as little as £13.65 an hour. Others suggested that they were planning to leave for Australia. One placard said that the Welsh Government's controversial 20-mile-an-hour speed limit saved 10 lives a year, while a doctor junior saved thousands. Scottish whisky industry has brought £7.1 billion into the UK economy last year, in 2022, sorry. Scottish produced is making up the lion's share of the UK food and drink exports, as new figures revealed that the Scottish whisky industry brought 7.1 billion into the UK economy in 2022, 26% of the UK's overall exports of that year. The SNP have said that these findings show that Scotland continues to punch well above its weight in terms of contributing to the UK's economy, despite being repeatedly shortchanged by Westminster. According to the Scottish Whisky Association, the gross value added of whisky in 2022 had increased by 29% since 2018. In 2022, it made up 77% of Scotland's food and drink exports. Similarly, Scottish salmon is the UK's largest food export and brings in 611 million to the UK's economy on a rolling basis. The SNP have said that these figures underline the potential strength and longevity of the Scottish economy in a future independent Scotland. Commenting, Kevin Stewart, MSP, said, "I welcome these figures, which shows that once again Scottish whisky continues to lead the way in UK exports, bringing in an impressive 7.1 billion into 2022, despite increased challenges on the sector following the Tories' botched Brexit deal and the cost of living crisis." Scottish produce continues to make up the lion's share of the UK exports and generates considerable wealth for the UK's economy. Not that this is in any way reflected in what Scotland receives from Westminster's budget. The numbers here speak for themselves. Scotland has skills, the industry, and the economic strength to go in it alone. With the financial levers of independence, Scotland would receive the full rewards of its exports without needing to wait for Westminster handouts. UK government is wasting tens of billions on crumbling infrastructure and badly run projects. The UK government is wasting tens of billions of pounds on badly run projects, Cold War-era IT systems, and crumbling, poorly maintained infrastructure, Parliament spending watchdog said today. Gareth Davies, the head of the National Audit Office, argued that government could save vast sums if it addressed maintenance backlogs and replaces out-of-date IT. In his annual speech, Davies is calling for a new approach to large projects such as HS2 and the new hospital buildings programme to prevent cost soaring. Both the Conservatives and Labour are looking for cost saving and the way of reforming Whitehall before the next general election. With the little headroom available within tight, self-imposed fiscal rules, Davies, the NAO Auditor General, says the next government is facing a tough challenge as he outlines the difficulties facing the public services. He claims smarter government can still provide people with better public services despite the fiscal backdrop. Parts of our national infrastructure are crumbling. Maintenance backlogs persist across the public estate, impeding service delivery and costing more over time, according to Davies. Out-of-date IT slows the modernisation of many public services, interfering with efficient government and increasing the risk of successful cyber attacks. High inflation has increased costs, particularly for large infrastructure projects. Singling out the government's problem in Whitehall in relation to HS2 and the new hospitals programme, he warns of deeming them mega projects too large for risks to be managed by the relevant departments and arm's-length bodies. Davies also highlights the archaic computer systems in two Whitehall departments, saying the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, spends more than 3/4 of its digital budget maintaining aging systems. The Ministry of Defence in part relies on a kit dating back to the Cold War. The NAO chief says that the UK government could make big savings in 5 major areas: big infrastructure, managing buildings and other assets, buying IT systems, and reducing fraud and error. He says projects like HS2 and new hospitals could be improved with the cross-government oversight board increasing the chance of making better decisions on whether to proceed and more efficiently holding it to account. On public assets, he says maintenance is as important as getting value for money in building infrastructure, and will call for more discipline in managing public buildings. He has also pointed to the NAO's recent work, which highlighted the false economy of allowing maintenance backlogs to build up. Our report on school buildings found more than a third are beyond their design life, leading to higher running costs and, in some cases, expensive emergency repairs. The same issues are significantly affecting patient care and costs at many NHS hospitals. He is also calling for much better management of procurement, saying of the 100 billion of contracts awarded by big departments in 2021 to 2022, a third were not subject to competition. Davies insists that savings will only be found if the UK government makes improving Whitehall efficiencies a high priority. Going to Davos in Switzerland, Volodymyr Zelensky has made an impassionate plea for international support for his country's war against Russia, insisting that Vladimir Putin must live to regret starting the conflict almost 2 years ago. In a speech that received a standing ovation from the Economic Forum in Davos, the Ukrainian president said that Putin had stolen 13 years of peace and would only respond to military defeat. If anybody thinks this is just about Ukraine, they are fundamentally mistaken, Zelensky said, after a meeting in Davos with 70 chief executives and the European Commission Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen. Addressed in his trademark black jumper, Zelensky said the Russian leader was spurred on to take military action by warnings to Ukraine not to escalate a conflict that began with the Kremlin's annexation of Crimea in 2024. Every do not escalate sounded like a you will prevail to Putin. Because of don't escalate, lives were lost, Zelensky said. One man has stolen at least 13 years of peace, replacing them with pain, and crisis that impacts the entire world. Zelensky had earlier received strong support from von der Leyen, who said Putin had failed militarily, economically, and diplomatically. Ukraine can prevail in this war, but must continue to empower their resistance, von der Leyen said in her keynote address. Ukraine has begun accession talks to join the European Union, a move supported in Brussels. The EU membership will be Ukrainians' historic achievement, she said. In previous years, Zelensky has spoken at Davos by video link, and his decision to appear in person this year reflects concerns in Kiev that the West has grown weary of the war. He challenged the idea that peace was possible were the conflict to be frozen, with Russia still occupying large chunks of the eastern Ukraine. Turning to Germany, protesters take to the street after an AfD mass deportation plan. Thousands of people across Germany have taken to the streets for a fourth consecutive day to voice their opposition to the far-right populist AfD party after politicians from the party met neo-Nazis to discuss a master plan for the mass deportation of asylum seekers and German citizens of foreign origin. Protesters have taken place in Leipzig, Rostock, Essen, and Berlin in recent days. The AfD's leadership has sought to distance itself from the gathering in November on the outskirts of Potsdam, west of Berlin, which was revealed by the investigative journalism network Corrective last Wednesday. However, several party members were involved and have since voiced their support for the ideas discussed. On Monday, Alice Weidel, the co-chair of the party, announced that she was parting ways with her advisor, Ronald Hartwig, after his participation in the event was confirmed. Weidel said she had no knowledge of his involvement and said that the AfD did not support the deportation plan. Party members said Hartwig, a former manager of the chemicals firm Bayer, who spent 4 years sitting as an AfD MP, was an important and respected member of the AfD and would continue to play an important role behind these scenes, prompting accusations that Weedle's decision had been a tactical move to appear to distance herself from the party from the event. Among MPs to publicly express their support for the ideas discussed at the meeting was Renee Springer, a representative for the state of Brandenburg in the federal government. On X, he stated that far from being a secret, the plan was a promise the AfD would fulfill should it get into power. We will send foreigners back to their homeland, millions of them. That is not a #secret plan, that is a promise, he wrote. German media have not held back in drawing parallels between Potsdam's meeting and the notorious Wannsee Conference of 1942, when high-ranking Nazis and the government figures gathered at the lakeside villa to discuss how to coordinate the implementation of the Nazi plan for mass extermination of European Jews. Wolfgang Thierse, a former president of the German parliament who was considered a moral authority in the country, threw his weight behind an initiative to explore the possibility of banning the party on the grounds of anti-constitutionality. He also offered his support for a petition looking to revoke the basic rights of prominent party members considered to be enemies of the Constitution. A petition specifically directed against the Thüringer AfD's group leader, Björn Höcke, has gained traction since the Potsdam meeting and was revealed, and by Tuesday had garnered more than 830,000 signatures. Representatives of the judiciary issued a joint statement on Monday condemning the meeting. In America, Donald Trump wins the Iowa caucus. Donald Trump will continue to the New Hampshire primaries more confident than ever about capturing the Republican nomination after the ex-president secured a 30-point win in Iowa's caucus on Monday. Trump won 51% of the vote in Iowa, giving him the largest margin of victory in the history of the state's Republican caucus, further securing his position as the Republican front-runner who will face President Joe Biden in November. Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, secured a distant second place, finishing in 21% of the vote, while Nikki Haley, a former South Carolina governor, said the UN ambassador trailed in third place with 19%. The entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who came in fourth, dropped out of the race following his disappointing performance, as did the former Arkansas governor Asa Hutchinson. Trump's victory in Iowa intensifies skepticism that any of his opponents will be able to overtake him in the Republican primary. Despite the 91 felony counts against him, Trump has maintained a consistent and significant lead in the 2024 U.S. race to win the Republican nomination. Waste supercomputer heat and old mines could provide heating to homes. As a first-of-its-kind system in the UK is being trialled in Edinburgh to see if waste heat from a large computing facility can be stored in disused mines working and used to warm homes. The large amount of energy needed to power the University of Edinburgh's advanced computing facility could be recycled to heat at least 5,000 households in Scotland's capital. The facility, home to the national supercomputer and used for research such as national climate modelling and health data modelling, currently releases up to 70 gigawatts of excess heat per year. This is projected to rise to 272 gigawatts once the recently announced next-generation exascale supercomputer is installed at the university. The 2.6 million feasibility study will examine how water in the old mine workings near the computer facility could be harnessed to heat people's homes. The process of cooling the supercomputers would be augmented to transfer the captured heat into the mine water, up to a maximum temperature of 40 degrees, which would then be transported by natural groundwater flow in the mine workings and made available to warm people's homes via heat pump technology. If successful, the study could provide a global blueprint for converting abandoned, flooded coal, shale and mineral mine networks into underground heat storage. With a quarter of the UK homes sitting above former mines, potentially 7 million households could have their heating needs met this way, researchers say. The Edinburgh Geobattery project, led by Edinburgh-based geothermal company Town Rock Energy, is being spearheaded by the industry academic partners from Scotland, the US and Ireland. The University of Edinburgh is the lead research partner on the project and is providing £500,000 of funding as a part of its own net zero objectives. Scottish Enterprise has awarded a £1 million grant to the project through the joint programming platform Smart Energy System, GPP-SES, and the Geothermica, two networks that have co-founded projects developing innovative heat and cooling solutions. A further US $100 million from the US Department of Energy will fund researchers from the Idaho National Laboratory and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. University College Dublin, whose researchers are funded by Geothermica and the Geological Survey Ireland, and the University of Strathclyde are also project partners. Edinburgh's innovations, the University of Edinburgh's commercialisation services will help make the research findings an investable proposition and support further funding applications. Lead academics on the project, Professor Christopher McDermott from the University of Edinburgh School of Geosciences, said, "This project opens up the potential for extracting heat stored in mine water more broadly. Most disused coal mines are flooded with water, making them ideal heat sources for heat pumps. With more than 800,000 households in Scotland in fuel poverty, bringing energy costs down in a sustainable way is critical, and using waste heat could be a game changer." David Townsend, founder of Town Rock Energy, said, "We are pleased to be leading this multinational research consortium, benefiting from world-leading academic expertise. Capturing, storing and reusing waste heat is critically important to reaching net zero. And here we are learning and testing how the best to do this in the ground, in legacy coal mine infrastructure." Well, that is it. That is it for this evening. Before I go, I want to remind you that broadcasting in Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. So to everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who has donated to our emergency crowdfunder over the past 2 weeks. We are now only £2,500 short of our target and very hopeful that we will reach the £10,000 by the end of the week. Although the immediate pressure has been eased and we can now focus on securing the future of independent broadcasting for Scotland, our need to grow our subscriber base and increase our funding is still urgent. Good night and thank you for watching.